Hello, and welcome to the From Nature to Nurture podcast. This is your host, Danielle, and I'm here today with our 29th episode. So I plan my podcast content a few months out in advance, kind of like what topics I want to cover. And then normally the day that I go to record is the day that I kind of figure out like bullet points and what I want to talk about. But it just so happens that this topic landed perfectly in a heat wave. So perfect time to talk about the Herbalist Summer Toolkit, the kind of herbs and preparations that I'm working with throughout the summer, especially in these extremes. Right now, it's in the hundreds every day, and it is extremely humid. I can't see out of any of my windows because they're just so wet. It is wild. So let's talk about some of my favorite preparations and herbs that I'm working with throughout the summer. Now, when I am kind of planning out my preparations, because as you know, if you've been doing herbalism, um, you have to make a lot of your preparations ahead of time, right? Like teas you can make quickly, but oxymels, tinctures, glycerites, things like that, they have to be made at least a month in advance. So I am planning ahead and looking at my summer plans, looking at kind of like what weather patterns we're in. Right now we're in an El Nino year, so it's supposed to be extremely hot, which I mean, I'm in Tennessee, it already gets really hot in the summer, so we are just trucking along and trying to survive. But planning ahead, I'm looking at what kind of things that I need. Now, I know that some main categories that I am focusing on in the summer are herbs for hydration, minerals, and cooling, some first aid plants because I'm outside doing a lot more, some nervous system calming plants because we're in the height of summer and it's exciting and the energy is high, and so sometimes it's really hard to sleep. So we're looking at like nervous system, sleep. We're also looking at skincare and sun care, herbs for bugs and stings and bites and things like that, and then a little bit of digestion support as well. So some of these herbs will cross over multiple categories, but I wanted to give you up at the front a well-rounded picture of the kinds of things that I'm planning for so that you can kind of think about your summer in this forward-thinking way to be able to plan out what herbs you're going to need on hand. The first thing that always comes to mind when I am thinking about summer plants are plants for cooling. So I'm thinking of drinks normally, like all the different herbal teas that I'm going to make, or the oxymels or things like that, because that's where I am getting majority of my herbal support is through a drink. Now I do that because it's going to be covering multiple levels of wellness. So it's helping me stay hydrated, it's helping me to stay cooled down, and it's almost a comfort thing where like we like to drink, those warm, cozy teas in the fall and winter. I want to drink a nice, cool, refreshing drink in the summer. And since I have a big garden and I spend a lot of time outside, having a nice cold iced tea to come back to kind of rehydrate myself is a mini ritual that I look forward to every day. So some of these herbs for these kind of categories are hibiscus, mints, nettle, oat straw, citrus, and fruits. So hibiscus not only adds this beautiful color and kind of fruity taste to your teas, hibiscus also helps to balance our body temperature by lowering it during this excessive heat. It has this wonderful cooling quality. So that is why you'll see a lot of hibiscus things in the summer. But then we have things like mints that are obviously cooling, things that are citrusy. So even if we're thinking outside of like lemons and oranges and actual like citrus, we can also put things in this category like lemon balm, lemongrass, lemon verbena. All of these plants also have a cooling quality and help to reduce body heat. But then you also get the extra benefits of the digestion help because of the acids in them and the citrus taste, which is kind of important because in the summer we're normally eating a lot more fresh fruits and vegetables, and our bodies just don't digest fresh vegetables very well because they need to be broken down. It takes more energy to kind of break them down. So by adding this extra layer of digestion support also to your cooling herbal teas, help to give you this more well-rounded herbal experience in your body. Now, when we're looking at hydration, We also need to be looking at minerals. I feel like most of us know this by now. There's been a lot more research into hydration and water over the past, I feel like 10 years. And so we should all know this by now, but like water itself is not hydrating in our modern context because our modern water, our bulk water, as a lot of people will call it, is stripped of the minerals, and the minerals are actually what help hold that hydration into your body. You've probably experienced this before where you've just been pounding, pounding, pounding filtered water and you're going to the bathroom a lot. Versus if you add mineral drops to your water, or if you add like an oxymel or a tincture or something with like the herbs to help hold the minerals, you won't lose as much of that water. You won't be running to the bathroom as much. So when we're looking at hydration in the summer, we have our fruits. Obviously, fruits are wonderful for hydration because they hold that structured hydration in them because they have their mineral content. But we can also look at herbs. So that's why we have nettle, oat straw, alfalfa, horsetail, all these like really high mineral dense plants that can be worked with in teas or oxymels, or like I said, even adding like tinctures to your water. Tinctures don't extract minerals as well because of the alcohol content, but if you layer them in with your other hydration things, then you're not negatively affecting your hydration. But outside of just drinking a bunch of herbal teas, I love to do oxymels. Oxymels are extremely hydrating. You also get the added benefit of the vinegar helping your gut, like your apple cider vinegar, or I've been working with peach vinegar and champagne vinegar this season. But these other kinds of fermented vinegars that are going to also help with your gut health, which leads back to that digestion. So I will make a seasonal oxymel. Right now I have one that is elderflower, lemongrass, tulsi, rose, mountain mint, and plum. And then I have another one that is in the peach vinegar. It is basil, elderflower, and lemongrass. So these are, to remind you, oxymels are vinegar and honey combination extracts. So I will add a bit of this to like a seltzer water or even regular water or juice or a probiotic soda or whatever you want to kind of mix down that vinegar intensity, or you can drink it straight. The amount of honey that you put in it will also change like how sweet it is or how um, strong the vinegar taste will be. So very customizable, but I love oxymels. I will drink them all day long. I kind of alternate between oxymels and iced teas and then just like plain water with like some mineral drops to kind of have some variety throughout the day. And lastly, for hydration, like I said before, the minerals are really what helps us hold on to that hydration. So you can also add some salt to your water, a good high quality mineral salt. I normally just use like a Redmond's, but you could use a Celtic sea salt or anything like that that is still full of those minerals to add that back into your water since our water is so filtered. Now, if you start slow, you won't really be able to tell that it's salty. It will just feel and taste kind of just fuller, kind of like how salt always helps to accentuate flavors in food. It kind of does the same with your water, where instead of having like no taste to your water, now you have like a little bit. It's really hard to explain. You just have to try it and you'll see what I'm talking about. But start small and you can always build more. If you go and dump a bunch of salt, you're gonna hate it and you're not gonna drink it. So start small. I normally just do I have like a salt grinder, so I'll just do like 2 grinds into my 40-ounce water bottle, and that'll be it for that whole serving. But you can have more or less, kind of just depending on what you feel like you need and what the taste is. So if you pick a few of those little tips, you should be on a pretty good direction with your hydration. What I also love with like the summer drinks is that it gives you a really fun way to explore different herbs and to kind of play and have a bit more levity in your herbal practice. Sometimes we get really bogged down with um, making these highly medicinal, super potent, concentrated preparations and focusing like really hard on kind of fighting whatever is happening to our bodies. And when you're working more in a hydration and mineral realm, a lot of times you're working more preventatively, which just it feels nicer, but also, like I said, it gives you some more room to play and explore and have more fun. And I think having fun in herbalism is just as important as making these like super potent medicines. If it's not fun, we're not going to keep doing it. If we're not enjoying it, then we're also not putting like our passion and our love into these products. And I truly believe that if you make something with love, it is going to do more for you than if you make something out of anger. So keep that in mind, have fun and play with your fun herbs and fruits and get to experiment. So the next category that I often think of in the summer is first aid. Now, I might not be doing as much hiking in the summer because here in the South it just gets way too hot and way too humid, and I'm trying not to get eaten alive by ticks. But I am kayaking, I am in the garden, I'm also just spending more time outside with the dogs, and with that comes the potential of extra disasters. And if you know me, you know that I'm pretty accident prone, and so I'm always having bruises and cuts and all sorts of stuff. So, some things that I have on hand always, specifically in the summer, is a plantain salve, a yarrow spray, St. John's wort oil, and I'll keep comfrey leaves around or make them into a salve as well. So thankfully we are in the summer, which means all of the plants are also super abundant. So while I do keep a salve around for cuts and scrapes and bug bites and whatnot, I can also just go out in the yard and make a poultice out of our plantain leaves. Before I get into what a poultice is, I want to remind y'all, if you haven't listened to them yet, I have 2 episodes that go pretty in depth into plantain and yarrow. So those were posted towards the beginning of last year when I first started the podcast, so around June, July of last year. So go and take a listen to those episodes to learn about those plants a little more deeply. So, what is a poultice and why would I use one? So, a poultice is a topical herbal preparation. I typically use a fresh poultice or a spit poultice if possible, and I will talk about other poultice varieties in a second. But how this looks like for me in the summer is I will go outside, I will grab a plantain leaf, I will put it in my mouth and chew it up, and then I'll spit it out and put it on the spot that I need it. Now, I use poultices when I have a bug bite or a sting to help draw anything out of there. If I step on a thorn or get a sliver or something, I will use a poultice to draw that out as well. But you can also use poultices to put over injuries for like as like a natural band-aid, or you can use poultices to help with sprains and aches and things like that. It all depends on what type of plant you're working with. So if I'm doing plantain, it's going to be more of the bites, stings, slivers, maybe even cuts and scrapes. Now if I'm looking for a like a sprained ankle or like a physical injury like that, like a muscular injury, then I'd be looking more towards comfrey to make a poultice. You can also make a poultice out of dried material by just very lightly hydrating it with like a little bit of water or even a little bit of tincture to put on that spot, kind of just make it a mush. You don't want it to be like a tea. You don't want it to be still super dry. You want to make it really mushy, kind of mimicking that spit poultice where you mush it up in your mouth and pull it out. Now, obviously, in the summer, that is ideal, but you can also make a salve out of those same plants to kind of help do some of that same work when you're in off season or if you're traveling around. Now, I always have a plantain salve made because what if I'm in an area where I can't find plantain? Or what if it's a different season? Or what if all the plantain that I find like looks like it's been compromised or something? So having a salve on hand is really important for my first aid. Then we have our yarrow spray. Now, I have yarrow tincture at all times because it is one of my favorite broad sweeping, like multidisciplinary plants. It is so wonderful. I take it internally, I work with it externally. So I always have it on hand as a tincture form. Now I like it in a spray bottle and with a little bit less alcohol in it, so I'll lower the alcohol percentage a little bit, specifically for wounds. Now, yarrow has this truly incredible ability of being able to staunch bleeding. It's called styptic when you're looking at herbal actions. And so by having this spray, it's also antibacterial and like antifungal, antimicrobial, like all of the wonderful antis that you want for open wounds. So having a spray or a salve or something of yarrow can be super beneficial when you are out and about adventuring, or if you're just clumsy like me and you get cuts and scrapes. I think the very first time I ever worked with yarrow topically was actually from shaving, where I had like a cut on my leg from shaving. Um, Wonderful plant. Put a little salve on it, stop bleeding within seconds. But having the spray is wonderful because then it works as like a natural, um, like antibacterial spray and to help kind of clean the wound as well. And then a salve can be nice if you especially mix it in with other plants. I'll normally put yarrow and plantain together to give that wound a little bit of protection as well. Now, of course, it is alcohol, which means it's going to sting, but just like anything else that you would use to clean a wound, it's going to sting anyways. And this way you're working with a plant. If you are in Tennessee, it's at least a native plant as well, which is always fun. And it's something that grows very easily in a garden. So it's also a plant that you can keep around and grow throughout the year to be able to make your own yarrow preparations very easily. It grows very well here and it's very low effort. Now, St. John's wort oil falls a bit into a couple different categories where wonderful first aid plant in terms of sprains and breaks and like physical injuries like of that sort, but it's also wonderful for your skin and for skin care, especially in the summer. So as a reminder, St. John's wort oil has to be made with fresh St. John's wort to be able to fully extract the hypericin. Um, but you can also purchase it, so you don't have to make your own if you can't find fresh St. John's wort, because I know that's a little difficult. But this beautiful, bright red, potent oil has been a lifesaver for me as someone who constantly has aches and sprains and all sorts of stuff. I really just like soak my ankles and wrists and shoulders in St. John's wort so often because of my numerous past injuries, but it's also wonderful for the sun. Um, it is nice and soothing to our skin. It's going to help protect our skin a little bit. And it's not like any sort of like SPF alternative, but this is like after sun care to be able to soothe the skin and calm it down after you've had excessive heat. I also find that just like in the summer, since I'm running around and doing more things, I do tend to be more sore. And so even just like preventatively, if I know like, oh, I know carried all these big bags of soil down to the garden today. My shoulders are going to be sore tomorrow. I will just go ahead and put St. John's wort oil on them now. They have wonderful affinity for the nerves and helping with pain and inflammation, even topically. So that is one of my standard go-tos. It is a plant that I also grow as well, but it's actually been pushed out of my garden this year by bee balm. So I'm gonna have to have a talk with bee balm about sharing the space because it's kind of taking over. And so I don't have any St. John's wort this year. But beautiful plant and one that I always have on hand as well. So keeping on in the theme of skincare and sun care, we also have other cooling plants. Obviously, we think we all know about aloe vera, but we also have calendula and marigolds, green tea, or even plantain can all be used topically to help soothe skin and to help cool down from that excess heat that our skin is holding after like a sunburn. These plants can be worked with as compresses or as oils or even like, so when I say compresses, I mean that you can make a tea out of them and then put like cloth in them and then use them as a compress that way, or even as like a poultice where you put a poultice of those plants on those areas. Oil is typically how I work with them, but the compress would be extra nice if you have a pretty severe sunburn. To be able to help add a little bit of hydration back to that skin that's super dried out and burned from the sun. And I know we've talked a little bit about a couple different topical oils here. The type of oil that you use isn't super important in terms of the medicinal quality. Castor oil does have kind of its own benefits, but outside of that, all the kind of other oils are kind of the same. It really depends on you and your preferences and if you want them to absorb faster or slower, or if you want them more to like sit on your skin and slowly go in, or if you want it to be like instantly absorbed. So I typically stick with either jojoba oil or olive oil, kind of depending on what I'm looking for, but jojoba oil is the one that I work with the most because it is the closest to our natural skin sebum, so it absorbs at a pretty good rate, where I feel like some other oils, like an argan oil or something like that, sometimes even a sunflower oil, I feel like absorb too fast to where I almost feel dry afterwards. I also have naturally dry skin, so my skin might just be absorbing things at an extra fast rate. So the type of oil that you use is not super medicinally important. It's more up to your personal preference. And then in this topical category, we also have kind of like bug bite care or bug bite prevention. Um, so we already talked a little bit about like plantain that'll help draw things out, but we also have like lavender, catnip, chamomile, jewelweed, um, lemon balm, rosemary, all these kinds of plants can help with prevention of like being a bug repellent, but can also help with itching and inflammation and all of that that comes from bug bites. I am terrible at not scratching bug bites. Like, I just want to claw my skin off until I bleed. I'm so bad at not scratching bug bites. But some salves of these kinds of herbs have really helped, at least in the beginning, to be able to kind of help remind myself to not bite them and to soothe them right off the bat when they're the most itchiest. So our last two categories here are nervous system slash sleep, and then digestion. Nervous system and sleep is really hard for me to come by in the summer. I am normally just like go, go, go. My brain is constantly on. It's hard for me to turn it off when I am trying to go to sleep. So, some different herbs that I have been incorporating specifically in a tincture form have been chamomile, skullcap, passion flower, rose, lemon balm, or if I need something stronger, like California poppy or valerian or kava, different things like that. Now, I prefer a tincture because I don't want to drink a tea before bed and then have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, which is also going to disrupt your sleep. But these can also be made into teas, or you can even make some of them into oxymels or glycerites or whatever kind of preparation that you want. But I'm really focusing on trying to stick to a routine as much as possible on top of taking these herbs to kind of help ease me into an evening flow, because right now I find myself wanting to stay up later and later and later, but then I am extra tired in the morning and then I can't function with the things that I need to get done. So taking these tinctures, having an evening routine, and finding what herbs are working best for me when I need them to, because sometimes you need a little bit of support, sometimes you need a stronger support. So I like to have multiple options ready so that I don't always want to go for whatever the strongest plant is. The goal is not to always just smash your system with herbs. It is that slow, steady, take a little bit and see how you feel. And so I've kind of been experimenting throughout the summer to kind of figure out what works best for me. And then nervous system regulation ties directly into digestion because our digestion is controlled by our nervous system. So right now, we're going to extra parties, we're seeing more friends, we're doing all these extra activities, and we have this very like high, loud, bright kind of energy in life a lot of times in the summer, and that can throw off a lot of things because it can throw off our sleep. And if we're not sleeping, then our digestion is all messed up. And so it all ties in together. So we have this herbal action called bitter nervines, which are my favorite to rely on. So bitter nervines are plants that have the bitter quality that are also a nervine. So they're going to support your digestion, but also support your nervous system. And like I just said, our nervous system runs our digestion. So super important to have this really fun combination in this like one plant. So chamomile is my go-to for that. But we also have catnip, lemon balm, motherwort, all these plants that are going to hit both of those systems. So, kind of like I said at the top of this podcast, where we are trying to layer in these different plants that are also going to hit all of these different systems to help round out our wellness. Now, digestion, I do normally work with as a tincture, sometimes as a tea, depending on what's going on. So I will normally take a tincture before a meal or drink a tea after a meal. It kind of depends on if I am thinking preventatively or if I am trying to fix things after the fact. So if I just had like a bunch of raw vegetables, I will normally do a tea afterwards and maybe a tincture because my body just doesn't like certain raw vegetables very much. Um, but there's so many different ways you can incorporate this because you could also use your bitters to make a mocktail and you can add that to your oxymel for the day or whatever, to kind of layer in throughout the day. You have all of these different herbal concoctions going on. So find whatever way works best for you, whether that be a tincture or making a mocktail or having a tea, and play around with it. It might be different depending on what foods you're eating or what kind of bitters you're working with. Um, yeah, it's all about experimentation, and that's also super fun. So, on that same vein of experimentation, the last thing I'll leave you with is that we're in a very abundant season. The plants are popping, the birds are singing, the bees are buzzing. And so, while you're also like hustling, bustling, running around, doing all your fun activities, I want to remind you to slow down and pay attention to what's going on in the natural world. Sometimes it's really easy for us to get caught up in our plans and not notice what else is going on. I have been spending every evening going down and watering the garden, and I am specifically looking for bees. And I am just following the bees around. And I think I've determined that my favorite animal is actually a bee because especially like the bumblebees, they are just so much fun to watch and I get so excited every time I see when I do a little squeal. And so lately I've been watching this huge bumblebee. I swear it's like as big as my eyeball. It's massive. Just eating from my garden or drinking, I don't know the right terminology there. Consuming pollen from my garden. And it has been kind of one of my favorite activities of the summer, to be honest. It sounds kind of lame maybe to some, but slowing down and kind of getting outside of the me kind of summer has been truly inspiring. Like let's go forwards with a little bit of a bee kind of levity where they're just buzzing around kind of slow and like lulling into their days. It's beautiful. And I hope that you find some moments to pause the summer to truly appreciate all the flowers and the life growing around us. If you would like to find out more about my upcoming classes and offerings, you can find me at rootandwandercollective.com. I'll see you along the plant path.